The roar of the jet engines was a sound so commonplace it was almost a silence, a resonant hum that vibrated through the very bones of the 247 passengers and 13 crew members aboard Skyway Airlines Flight 702. It was the sound of normalcy, of a 1,000-ton machine defying gravity with a practiced, technological grace. Outside the oval windows, the world was a tapestry of endless blue, the sun glinting off the Boeing 787 Dreamliner's swept wings. Below, the South Atlantic stretched out, a vast, hypnotic emptiness of indigo and turquoise, its surface broken only by the occasional whitecap. It was Tuesday, March 18, 2025. The flight from Rio de Janeiro to Cape Town was a well-worn path, an 11-hour interlude between two vibrant cities, a journey so routine it was mundane. In seat 12B, a businessman finalized a presentation on his tablet. In 34F, a young child, cradled in the crook of her mother's arm, slept with the profound peace of the innocent. In the cockpit, Captain Eva Rostova and First Officer Ben Carter chatted about their planned layover, a shared anticipation of a good meal and a solid night's sleep. The air was filled with a low murmur of conversation, the soft hiss of the air conditioning, and the faint rhythmic clinking of a flight attendant's cart as it began its journey down the aisle. This was the last, perfect, unremarkable moment before the universe simply opened up and swallowed them whole. The moment of disappearance was not a moment of drama. There was no violent shudder, no scream of tearing metal, no sudden sickening plunge. It was, by all accounts later pieced together, a quiet cessation. The last transmission from Captain Rostova to air traffic control in Brasilia was a model of professional brevity. Brasilia, Skyway 702, maintaining flight level 350, all normal. The controller's acknowledgement was a rote, almost bored. Roger, Skyway 702. Contact Cape Town Oceanic on 127.9er. Good day. Rostova's reply was the last word anyone would ever hear from Flight 702. 127.9er, good day. The blip on the radar screen in Brasilia continued its steady, westward crawl for another 37 seconds. Then it simply faded. Not like a light being switched off, but like a breath on a cold window, a gentle, gradual dissolution until there was nothing left but the empty, glowing green grid of the controller's screen. First, there was no alarm. Ghost returns, temporary satellite glitches, they were part of the job. A minute passed. Then two. The controller tried to re-establish contact. Skyway 702, Brasilia. Confirm your altitude. Silence. A different kind of silence now. One that was no longer peaceful but pregnant with a dawning, cold dread. He tried again, his voice tightening slightly. Skyway 702, any station, this is Brasilia Control. Do you copy? The only response was the hollow, static hiss of an open frequency. The blip did not return. The plane, and the 260 souls it carried, had ceased to be a tangible object in the world. It had become a question mark against the vast, indifferent canvas of the sea. The first hours were a frantic, chaotic scramble of hope and procedure. The Cape Town Oceanic Sector, upon realizing Flight 702 had never checked in, initiated emergency protocols. Commercial airliners along the route were asked to attempt contact. Pilots, their voices crackling with concern, filled the airwaves. Skyway 702. This is Speedbird 419er on your frequency, do you read? Skyway, Skyway, South African 808 calling. The silence from Flight 702 was absolute, a void that seemed to absorb the very radio waves themselves. Search and rescue centers in Brazil, South Africa, Namibia, and the British territory of Ascension Island were alerted. The International Satellite System for Search and Rescue, COSPA's SARSAT, was queried. There were no signals. No emergency locator transmitter, ELT, had been activated. This was the first chilling anomaly. A catastrophic event, an explosion, a sudden breakup, should have triggered the ELT automatically. Its silence suggested something else, something either so instantaneous it bypassed all systems, or so insidious it allowed for no alarm to be raised. As the sun set over the South Atlantic, the largest, most technologically advanced maritime search operation since the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was mobilizing. The hope was that Flight 702 was simply adrift, a ghost ship riding the swells, its communications disabled but its passengers and crew alive, waiting for rescue. The families, gathered in a dedicated lounge at Cape Town International Airport, were initially told it was a communications loss issue, a phrase designed to cushion the blow of the unknown. They clung to this fragile hope, their faces pale and etched with a terror that was still fresh, still malleable. They checked their phones obsessively, praying for a text, a call, any sign that their loved ones were merely delayed, not deleted. But as the first search aircraft, a South African Air Force C-130 Hercules, reached the last known coordinates and began its grid pattern, that hope began to curdle into a deep, unsettling fear. The pilots, scanning the endless water through their night vision goggles, saw nothing. No wreckage, no life rafts, no slick of fuel or debris. The ocean was a black, featureless plain under a canopy of impossibly bright stars. Satellite imagery, tasked and retasked, scanned thousands of square miles of ocean surface. It revealed fishing boats, whales, patches of sargassum weed, but not a single piece of identifiable wreckage from a Boeing 787. The sea gave up no secrets. By the third day, the official narrative began to fracture under the weight of the inexplicable. In an age where a smartphone can be pinpointed to a specific city block, where every financial transaction is logged, and every digital footprint is stored in a cloud server, the complete disappearance of a state-of-the-art aircraft was not just a tragedy. It was an impossibility. It was a tear in the fabric of reality, a stark reminder that for all our mapping and monitoring, vast, trackless voids still existed on our planet, voids that could absorb a 200-foot-long carbon composite airliner without a trace. Theories, like vultures, began to circle the corpse of the mystery. The official investigation, a multinational effort led by aviation authorities from Brazil, South Africa, and the United States, pursued every conceivable line of inquiry, no matter how remote. The first and most obvious was a catastrophic mechanical failure. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner, while revolutionary, had its share of teething problems. Investigators combed through the maintenance records of the aircraft, tail number N780SA, nicknamed Southern Cross. They were immaculate. The engines, two Rolls-Royce Trent 1000s, had been serviced on schedule. They scrutinized every airworthiness directive, every service bulletin. They found nothing that could explain a sudden, total loss. They modeled scenarios. A rapid decompression. But that would have given the pilots time to don oxygen masks and initiate an emergency descent. Fire. The 787 had multiple, redundant systems to detect and suppress fires in its cargo holds and avionics bays. And a fire severe enough to destroy all communications would have taken time. Time in which a mayday call, however frantic, would almost certainly have been made. The silence was the problem. The utter, unbroken silence. Then came the human factor. Captain Eva Rostova, 48, was a former Air Force pilot with over 15,000 hours of flight time. She was known for her calm demeanor and strict adherence to procedure. First Officer Ben Carter, 32, was younger but equally competent, with a clean record. Their backgrounds were vetted, their finances examined, their personal lives placed under a microscope. There were no red flags, no hidden debts, no recent psychological distress, no ties to extremist groups. The possibility of a pilot's suicide, a grim specter that had haunted other aviation disasters, seemed vanishingly small. The flight data, what little was transmitted automatically before the final disconnect, showed no erratic maneuvers, no deliberate climb to an altitude that would cause hypoxia, no dive. The flight path was straight and true until the moment it vanished. This led, inevitably, to the realm of foul play. Had Flight 702 been the victim of a hijacking, a bomb? The passenger manifest was scrutinized. It was a typical cross-section of international travel. Tourists, businesspeople, students, families. 2 individuals had minor criminal records. One for fraud, another for a bar fight years prior. Nothing that suggested the capability or motivation to orchestrate the disappearance of a commercial airliner. The cargo manifest was equally clean. Mostly perishable flowers and fruit from Brazil, some diplomatic mail, and a collection of geological samples for a university in Cape Town. No hazardous materials, no high-value items that would be worth such an audacious act. The bomb theory persisted, fueled by the lack of debris. A perfectly placed explosive device could, in theory, rupture the pressure hull so catastrophically that the aircraft would disintegrate into tiny pieces, which might sink quickly in the deep ocean. But again the silence nagged. Even in a rapid breakup, debris fields are vast, and modern radar should have detected something, a cloud of fragments. And the satellite systems. The 787 is equipped with ACARS, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, which routinely sends digital data bursts via satellite to the airline's operations center. The final ACARS transmission from Flight 702 was entirely normal, reporting fuel status, engine performance, and position. The next scheduled transmission never came. It wasn't jammed or interrupted. It was as if the source of the transmission had been unplugged from the universe. As the weeks turned into months, the search area expanded and then contracted, as leads proved false and hopes faded. The families transitioned from desperate hope to agonized grief, and finally, to a hollow, enduring anger. They became a chorus of the bereaved, demanding answers from governments and airlines, appearing on news programs with photographs of their loved ones, their eyes begging for a resolution that never came. The official investigation, though still technically open, was running out of places to look. The seafloor in that region was a complex, mountainous landscape, with trenches plunging to depths of over 5 miles. Sonar scans revealed canyons and seamounts, a submerged world of profound darkness and pressure, a perfect hiding place for a secret. But even there, the advanced autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, sent to scour the abyss found nothing. No fuselage, no wing sections, no black boxes pinging their forlorn, ultrasonic elegy. It was as if the Southern Cross had been lifted from the sky by a divine, or perhaps demonic, hand. It was in this vacuum of facts that the fringe theories flourished, feeding on the official investigation's inability to provide a single shred of physical evidence. The void left by science was filled with speculation, and the story of Flight 702 was reborn in the darker corners of the internet, transforming from a tragedy into a myth. The most persistent of these was the electronic fog, or Bermuda Triangle theory. Proponents pointed to the historical mysteries of the region, the legends of ships and planes vanishing in strange, glowing banks of fog. They postulated that Flight 702 had flown into an anomalous weather phenomenon, a kind of electromagnetic storm that could disable all electronics and confuse pilots, leading them astray until their fuel was exhausted. They spoke of time warps and dimensional rifts, suggesting the plane and its passengers existed in some other reality, trapped in a moment that would never end. It was a comforting thought for some, a fantastical alternative to the brutal finality of a crash into a cold, dark ocean. Another theory, born from the paranoia of the digital age, was that of a cyber attack. A sophisticated hacker, perhaps state-sponsored, had found a zero-day vulnerability in the 787's complex computer network. They had taken remote control of the aircraft, switched off all transponders and communications, and flown it on a new, secret course to a hidden location. For what purpose? To steal the technology. To use the passengers as pawns in some unseen geopolitical game. The theory was that the Southern Cross was now sitting in a hangar in a remote desert, its passengers either executed or living in a perpetual, hidden captivity. This theory was bolstered by the complete lack of debris, which suggested a controlled landing somewhere. But where? And to what end? The world was saturated with surveillance. Hiding a Boeing 787, even in a vast desert or a hidden jungle airstrip, seemed a near impossible feat in the 21st century. Then there were the more outlandish ideas. Ufologists produced grainy, enhanced images from weather satellites, claiming to show strange luminous objects near Flight 702's last known position. They spoke of an abduction not by terrorists, but by intelligences from beyond our world. The passengers weren't dead, they were subjects of study, on a journey far more profound than the one from Rio to Cape Town. It was a narrative that transformed the victims from casualties of a random accident into chosen ones, their disappearance imbued with a cosmic significance. Each theory, from the scientific to the sci-fi, was a desperate attempt to fill the agonizing void of the unknown. They were modern-day fairy tales, stories we told ourselves to make the unbearable randomness of fate feel like it had a pattern, a reason, however terrifying. The official investigation, bound by evidence and protocol, could only offer a shrug of immense, frustrating ignorance. The fringe theories, unburdened by facts, offered grand, sweeping narratives of conspiracy and wonder. The truth, it seemed, was trapped between the sterile silence of data and the noisy clamor of imagination. 5 years on, the case of Skyway Airlines Flight 702 remains open, a cold case file in a dozen different countries. The official report, a 1,000-page tome of technical analysis and dead ends, concludes with a single devastating sentence. The definitive cause of the disappearance of Flight 702 cannot be determined due to a lack of physical evidence. The families have mostly dispersed, their public vigils now private, annual moments of grief. Some have sued the airline and Boeing, reaching confidential settlements that provide financial comfort but no answers. A memorial was erected in a seaside park in Cape Town, a curved wall of granite bearing the 260 names. It is a place of remembrance, but it is not a grave. The ocean refused to provide one. The legacy of Flight 702 is not just a story of a missing plane. It is a story about the limits of human knowledge. We have built a world of incredible transparency, where we believe we are constantly observed, tracked, and logged. We carry devices in our pockets that can map our every movement. We fly in machines that are marvels of engineering, packed with sensors and computers. The disappearance of Flight 702 was a stark, terrifying reminder that this transparency is an illusion, a thin veneer over a deep and enduring darkness. It proved that the maps are not finished, that the blank spaces are still there, not just on the globe but in our understanding of the physical world itself. The pilots who now fly the same route from Rio to Cape Town sometimes glance out at the featureless ocean below and feel a chill that has nothing to do with the altitude. They check their instruments a little more frequently. They feel the presence of the void. Air traffic controllers, when they hand off a flight over that particular stretch of ocean, do so with a subtle, unspoken tension. The phrase "good day" has taken on a new, somber weight. And so, the mystery endures, a ghost in the machine of modern life. The Southern Cross is still up there, not in the sky, but in the collective consciousness, a permanent question mark. It is the plane that took off into a clear blue day and flew, not to its destination, but into the realm of legend. It is the echo of a roar that faded into nothing, the 260 smiles that were wiped from the earth without a reason, the enduring proof that in our hyperconnected, digitally mapped world something or someone can still simply cease to exist. The ocean keeps its secret, and we are left only with the haunting, unanswerable silence, a void that speaks louder than any wreckage ever could.